So today's video is going to be a little bit different. As you can probably see, I'm outside and I don't know if you can hear the background noise. I'm hoping not, but then again, I'm also hoping so because I'm hearing the sound of birds and it's beautiful. I chose to step outside today and enjoy the whole process because honestly, I just keep getting reminded over and over that life is short. And if we're waiting for it to be our definition of perfect, we're never going to enjoy it. And at the same time, the ability we have to affect our surroundings by the thoughts that we choose is magnificent. I'm going to share some thoughts on how what I've been learning about the power of the mind on health, and specific stories from my own life, um, and where I see the world headed, and a little bit about why I'm hesitant to keep sharing videos that seem out of alignment with where I believe I'm headed. Um, so let me start with first giving you an example of my latest understanding of some things. Um, Recognizing that when it comes to energy medicine, what's really happening is that the person who's performing the energy medicine on you, let's say Reiki, for example, and don't take my word for it, and this is definitely coming back to the power of your mind. Test it out for yourself and see what feels true, because that at the end of the day, that's what matters. We're all on our own journeys and figuring out who we truly are and how we choose to show up. And that's constantly changing, right? So, anyway, back to the Reiki example. Somebody that's performing Reiki has the ability to influence energy, but a big part of that, as I understand it, is holding space for the belief of what's possible. So, for example, tying in what I learned about the biology of belief from Bruce Lipton, our DNA is not running the show. It's the blueprint, but that's it. Like, just like any house can be modified, your body being that house can also be modified. And it's coming from your thoughts. So the power of the strength of your belief will make it so. This is the placebo effect, and it's been proven over and over. But it has to be a knowing. It has to be like the same way some of us might trust taking a pill is going to solve whatever that pill is meant to help with, that level of trust, because otherwise it's just words coming out of your mouth. But the person who's doing the Reiki has a strong belief that they're able to create change in that person. And that other person might temporarily feel some relief from it, depending on where their belief is. But if they believe that it's not going to help, then it won't. If they believe that it will solve everything, then it will potentially solve everything. So I related this back to the idea of coaching and how what I've learned about the brain. So in the process of resiliency, when you think of resiliency, you might think, oh, resiliency, that's a positive word. It feels good, right? But the act of being resilient, not so much, brings to mind a lot of frustration and all of the learning that goes into resiliency. And a lot of times it's uncomfortable. So the way that the brain is wired, you've got the space between the unknown and the known, and that's really the synapse that's firing and taking that space to travel. And it can feel like an eternity when you're talking about whatever emotions get involved. Um, but if you can hold that space for yourself, like I have done in my life and even very recently, then you can level up to that new understanding of things. And so as a coach, you're really just literally holding space for that brain pattern to catch up with what you know to be true. And it's not that the coach is telling the other person what to believe. That person is deciding this is the direction I'm heading. And the coach then just provides that gap of uncomfortable. They hold the space of uncomfortable for the other person to get from unknown, I see myself like this, but it's not where I want to be, to known, I see myself like this is where I want to be. I realized that I have done this in my life multiple times, as we all have. But for me, with one of the health examples, and I don't know if that I've shared this publicly before, when I guess it's been a couple years ago, I decided I was going to stop taking my thyroid medication. My doctor had been giving it to me for a few years, and I was in opposition to it in the first place. But that's a whole longer story. Um, and it she kept upping the dose because it wasn't working for me anymore, and I was feeling worse and worse. Found out she was going to retire, and same time, the medication wasn't coming on time, like or I anticipated it wasn't going to come on time because there were some problems happening. And I made up my mind at that point, if this medication doesn't get here on time, I'm just not going to take it anymore. That's just a sign from the universe that I'm not meant to do this. And that's exactly what happened. And my level of belief in not taking that medication was not as strong as a knowing, but strong enough to continue to proceed. And so I worked my way through a lot of uncomfortable symptoms, but I had in my mind, based on some research I had done, it's going to take about this many weeks for me to see a change. And I kept telling myself that as I was facing all of these uncomfortable symptoms, I can do this, and it's going to take this long, and I just have to hold on. And I successfully left those medications behind, and I'm not telling you what to do. You have to listen to your intuition, and your higher self, your soul knows what needs to happen in your situation. But what I'm inviting you to, if it resonates, is a higher understanding of what's possible. Um, because that's where I see myself headed. And the reason why I mentioned about being uncomfortable is because to come on here and tell you this is how it is, because this is what I've learned and this is the way I understand it, and I'm the expert. You are the expert on you. I can provide you with information and things that have been helpful to me, but now more and more I'm recognizing it's almost unethical or irresponsible to hop on here and say things like, well, here's what you need to do for menopause. Yeah, I've learned a lot of stuff and I can spout off all the facts and my own personal experience with things. But at the end of the day, if that doesn't fit true for you, you're not willing to walk in that direction, or it just doesn't feel right, or you recognize that there's some greater truth that is calling to you, then go do that. And I'm going to give you several examples of what I mean by that. So today I was talking with a friend, and he shared about an article that he read where a study that he read where back in the 70s, a group of elderly gentlemen were put in a retreat center home, and the home was remodeled to replicate the time frame of what it would have been like when they were much younger men. Magazines, TV shows, all of that, the furnishings, everything. And after they had these gentlemen stay in this home for, I believe it was a week, by the time they were done, they had physical signs of being younger. based on medical testing and so forth. So the aging process was very much influenced by their mind. Another example, The Myth of Normal, a book written by Gabor Mate. There's a story of a woman who was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And the doctor's telling her, you'll be lucky to live. I don't think you'll last much longer than whatever time he said. I would recommend you get this type of treatment, and we'll hope for the best. And she knew in her spirit, because she listened to her intuition, that just wasn't true for her. So she refused his treatment, and she went the other direction and said, not only am I going to beat this, but I'm going to have a child. And he's like, you don't know what you're talking about. Your body can't make it as it is, let alone carry a child. And she did just that, but she stood firm in it. Like there was an absolute knowing, not just a belief, a knowing. So it can start out as a belief, but unless it's a strong belief that you're willing to commit to, regardless of what takes place, it's not going to turn into a knowing. So if you think about any kind of situation where you set out to change something in your life and it started out as, I believe this is going to help me, or something along those lines, and you committed to it because you were convinced that somehow it was going to be beneficial, then it turns into a knowing once it's beneficial, right? Like you just keep plugging along. I'll give you a very recent example. So I was faced with a situation where I was deciding that I needed to have a awkward conversation with a friend, and I was all up in my head about it, really concerned about how this conversation was going to go, and feeling very nervous. And I kept delaying the conversation until finally the universe kept sending me signals and encouragement, my higher self, like, you can do it, and this is going to change things for you. Um, Trust in yourself, have that courage, move ahead. And finally, I chose to go ahead and have the conversation, and it got to a critical point in the conversation where I asked a question that was very uncomfortable to wait for an answer from. And as I was waiting for the answer, and it felt like an eternity waiting for this answer, but as I was waiting for the answer, I just kept telling myself, no matter what answer I get, there will be relief in it, because the answer will provide that. And I can do trust in that right now and give myself relief right now. And it was a challenging task. I didn't immediately feel relief, but I just kept reminding myself, no matter what answer I get, it'll bring relief, because it'll be the truth. Even if it's just the truth for that person, I won't have to wonder anymore where things stand. So it reminded me of a story from Byron Katie, a spiritual teacher I really enjoy, where she said, she shared a story where someone was about to slap her, and after they did so, she thanked them. And the way that she justified that, or explained that, is in the moments that we're waiting for a person to do that, there's all these thoughts, oh my God, I'm so afraid they're going to hit me. Even if that is, for 30 seconds or however long it takes for that swing to occur. We've got all this, terrorizing that we do for ourselves. And in that moment when it actually happens, yeah, there might be a little bit of physical pain, but the story that you're telling yourself is no longer there. Like, okay, they slapped me. End of story. Like, it hurts. Oh, well, or it hurts. I got to go do this. But you're not in this mode of, oh my God, it's terrible. It's coming. Oh my God. Oh my God. And that, again, relates back to the brain and retraining the nervous system into this new way of being. So how does any of this tie in with menopause? Well, we can choose to rewire our brain to accept that that story is just not true. Just like more and more people are waking up to the fact that we are God, all of us together are God in human form. Excuse me, and we are powerful beyond what we imagine. And I'll give a recent example of that as well. So, trying to figure out how to shorten this story. I was chatting with a friend and I referred him to a lady who I participated on a podcast with. And I thought that he would most likely resonate with what she's doing on her podcast. And he was excited about it and decided he was going to pursue it. And in the course of the conversation, I mentioned, she had offered that potentially I could teach a class with her. But when I made my submission to the people who handle that process, I never heard back. So maybe, I came up with a story of why I thought that might be true. And it wasn't, I'm an offended story, but just like it didn't work out. Okay, it didn't work out. So he had sent me an Instagram video, and I don't get on there often. And I was looking, this is unrelated to this other story, kind of. I was looking for the Instagram video, and I got on Instagram and noticed that on my Instagram account, I had an inbox message waiting for me. And I opened it up, and I see it's from that woman who I referred him to. And she's telling me, and it had taken place months beforehand, she's telling me, we changed our processing of submissions, and I think yours got lost in the process. Try again, and here's the information you need. And I was blown away. Like, I had literally just been talking with him about that, and I wouldn't have gone on Instagram had it not been for him sending that video. So he sent me a video that connected me back to the person I connected him to. And both of us, all of us, being blessed by the process. Like, I manifested that whole situation, as did he. And I don't entirely understand how all of the manifestation stuff works, but what I do understand is that we're doing it, either subconsciously or consciously, depending on how aware we are and whether we've dealt with some garbage from our past. So this applies to health as well. And there's a whole lot of support out there that points in this direction, besides the mentions I've already shared. Another one that comes to mind is New German Medicine, which is where they recognize that stories of trauma, if you will, and it's really the emotion behind the story, not the story itself, get caught in the system, and then until you release that story or rewrite that story, like I did with my thyroid situation, the story continues to play out because you're that powerful. If you believe it, then your body's like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what she wants. So you can rewrite the story of your menopause journey. And I'm not telling you that it's going to turn out that everything's rosy all the time. I am telling you that it's possible for you to not only accept what's happening as perfect in this moment, but also have what Gabor Mate referred to in the Myth of Normal book as the compassion of possibility. So when you get, say, a cold or a flu, you don't set out in your mind at this point, because we've overcome that enough times to say something in your mind like, oh my God, I'm going to have the flu and I'm going to die. Or this is going to go on for a month or 2 months or 3 years or whatever. You don't tell yourself that story. So what story are you telling yourself about your health? Really dig into that. And what story might be behind that even? Like, dig into that as well. without making too much of a digging uh, treasure hunt out of it. Because the truth is, the bottom line truth is, you have never been separated from God. And any story that you say that is not godlike, so lack or sickness or whatever, defies that fact. And it is a fact. And there's many examples of proof of it. But if I have to prove it to you, then you don't believe it anyway. You have to prove it to yourself. You have to accept it full force. So walking as if until no longer it's a belief but a knowing. That's my encouragement to you with your health. And do what supports that. And I'm more than glad to share what has helped me with managing some things. But also, I have already begun the process of rewriting the story. And I don't know when that story is going to be rewritten, because it's not up to me entirely. I It's not up to me, my ego, period. It's a surrender moment. And one more story that just came in. Today's going to be a longer video, obviously. There's a guy by the name of William McLeod, and he was diagnosed with an illness and started systematically avoiding all these different things that were told to him as, this will cause your illness to be worse. And eventually got his illness, he's avoiding all the things, and his illness got worse and worse. And then finally got to the point where the doctors are saying, there's nothing more we can do. You're going to die soon. And he ran into somebody while he was sitting at a park. And that person said, "Oh, I've had that illness. I know what you need to do." He said, go to a restaurant and eat a steak dinner and have a cigarette and have some, a glass of wine. All of these things that he's describing were things that the guy had been avoiding for years. Like, oh no, that'll make me sick. But he had this moment of trusting this person, and also of recognizing whatever happens, surrendering completely to the outcome of how this is going to turn out. Because he decided he would rather just go ahead and live whatever life he had in a way that seemed more enjoyable than to constantly be stressing himself out about not dying. So instead of trying not to die, he chose to live to the best of his ability. And his disease went away. And it wasn't the steak or the cigarettes or the alcohol. It was his faith, and a unwavering faith at that. But also one that was like, I trust you completely with my life. I'm done fighting. And now he leads these wonderful classes and writes books and all these things. But really, he's just sharing the power of what his experience was. And that's where I'm headed. Um, I am currently doing a workshop series that relates to the 9 things that I use to help heal myself of stage 3 cancer. And you've heard me touch on some of them just in this video. Powerful stuff. And so much so that I recently decided I would invite people to donate what they feel led to donate, because in the words of a friend and words of my own mind, because this resonated strongly with me, information should be free. Solutions are a different story. We work together to provide solutions, and each of us, according to what we're able to live with, afford. And even that's a story, but it's one that I'm still working through. All of that to say, I agree that information should be free. And whether that is everybody's agreement or not doesn't matter. It's rising to the occasion of, how generous can I be? And in so doing, how can I help create a world I would like to live in? So be the change you want to see in the world, right? If I want the world to be a place where there's a level of generosity that blows your mind, then I got to be that person. I got to create that world, even if I'm on my own creating it, because the outside world is a reflection of the inside world. And I recently discovered a new song, new to me, that I'll post in the description that speaks to this fact. It's all we are is how we treat people. So I hope you've enjoyed listening. I know this was a longer video. My goal was to empower you with the knowledge of who you truly are, and go out and live that to the best of your ability according to your intuition. Make it a great day.